In the movies, Dracula wears a cape, and some old English guy always manages to save the day at the last minute with crosses and holy water. But everybody knows the movies are full of shit. The truth is, it started with Blade.
How did it all start with Blade? Dracula is hundreds, if not thousands, of years old in this film. Blade was born in what, the 60s? Blade's mum was bitten by a vampire. Surely it all started with him. Maybe they're saying it started with the film Blade. In that case, yes. Yes, it did. Very perceptive. Well done. A freaking plus. Right off the bat, I've got to say, I'm not here to tell you that Blade Trinity is anything but the third best film in this franchise. And the drop in quality from the second one and this is substantial. Are there things great about Blade Trinity? There are things that are interesting and show potential, but this is a troubled little thing. So today, we look into Blade Trinity. For those of you who don't know, Blade Trinity is the third film in the Blade series. It's right here in the title. Right here. See it? Good. The film starts with Blade, or more likely Blade's stunt double, but I'll get to that later, being framed and hunted by police. All the while, a team of vampires, including Triple H, and one of the strangest casting decisions in the history of cinema, find and uncover Dracula, that guy from Prison Break. They do this in an attempt to create a race of sunlight-resistant vampires and kill Blade. It gets a bit fuzzy. After escaping the FBI, Blade joins up with a team called the Night Stalkers. Together they plan to release a virus called Daystar that, if injected into Dracula, will kill every vampire on Earth. So, let's sink our teeth into this one.
Oh, how terrible.
Harold?
You should feel bad.
First question, Harold.
Alright, okay. We got a real question here.
What? You mean from an actual person?
Yeah. Oh god, I can't, I don't know what to do.
Calm down.
Should I delete it?
What? No! Just calm down. What does it say?
It's from RJ49. It says, what is your opinion on the Blade movie franchise and how do you think it compares to other superhero movies?
I really like Blade. That's the base of it. I probably discovered it after Marvel had invested a little more into the superhero genre with the likes of X-Men and Spider-Man. It should be noted that Blade was Marvel's first modern superhero film. Up until that point, their only cinematic releases had been a 1989 Punisher film starring Dolph Lundgren and Howard the Duck. When the first Blade film was released, there really wasn't anything else around. DC had just killed their Batman franchise with Batman and Robin, and X-Men was still a couple of years off. By the release of Blade 2, Spider-Man was hitting the theatres, and by the time Trinity rolled along, we'd already got X-Men 2, Daredevil, a Hulk film, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Hellboy, another Punisher film, Spider-Man 2, and Catwoman. So, Blade is very important in the history of comic book films, and is a very enjoyable series. What differentiates this from the likes of Spider-Man and X-Men is the gritty approach to the comic book character. The filmmakers adapted the character from the comics and rejigged him for a 90s audience. The character of Blade in the comics was boastful and cocky, and just a human immune to vampirism. Not to mention, he was a damn snappy dresser. The film version shares similarities with another version though, the one from the 1994 Spider-Man cartoon. He's gonna play that music every time I mention Spider-Man. Oh. Come on! Blade's mum was bitten by a vampire and Blade was born half vampire, half human, possessing all the vampiric strengths with none of the weaknesses, other than the first. He was taken in by Whistler, whose first appearance was in this series, and trained in the ways of martial arts and vampire hunting. All that sound familiar? Well, it should, because it's Blade's backstory from the first film. Wesley Snipes made the character his own, and it's impossible to see someone else in the role, apart from the time where someone else was in the role. Yes, Blade continued as a TV series. I haven't seen it, and by the looks of it, no one else did either. LL Cool J was originally considered to play the part of Blade in the films. He didn't get it, but he did go on to be in Deep Blue Sea with a parrot. So who's the real winner here? Wesley. Wesley's the winner, as indicated by his long list of direct-to-DVD films and jail time. The first two films felt dark and grimy, and the events and characters fit in perfectly with the worlds created in those films. Unfortunately, the third one seems to get a tad confused.
Evening, ladies.
Oh, hi Ryan Reynolds. Anyway, to answer your question, I'm a big Blade fan. It took a very different approach to the superhero film genre and it paid off.
The next one comes from Lodge Blackman. Says everyone knew this was shit when they were making it. How can you not see it?
Oh, I can see it. In fact, I didn't realise how hard it was going to be to stay positive until I watched this film again. Chris Christopherson and Wesley Snipes were incredibly unhappy with the script, arguing that it was watering down what had made the first two films great by introducing too many new characters. The problems between the men and writer-director David Goyer have been well documented, and Snipes is said to have made physical threats, stay in his trailer all day getting high, and only come out for extreme close-ups. Chances are, if Blade's on screen and it's not an extreme close-up, that, my friend, is probably not a Wesley. According to Patton Oswalt, after a clash with the director, Wesley would only talk to Goyer through post-it notes he signed, "From Blade." I'm sorry, Goyer, if the best material comes from real life, use that. As well as clashing with the director, Snipes also didn't mesh well with the new cast members, either completely ignoring them, or in the case of Ryan Reynolds, simply referring to him as "that cracker." So I feel I should give you my opinion on what's wrong with the film before going in search for any positives. Join me as I go into the top 5 reasons Blade Trinity is just not that good. Number 5. Swearing. Swearing for emphasis can be very effective, but in this film it's forced and laughably childish.
We're gonna fucking lose!
All the way in the shitstorm sweepstakes.
What the fuck? What the fuck?
Cutting a bloody fucking path.
They pretty much fucking ass raped us.
And you're sick as fuck.
Kill you, motherfucker, I'll kill you. And when the fuck did you see my dick, fuckface?
Don't fuck with my things!
Fucking Hannibal King!
No shit.
The one that made me cringe the most is in the climax where Lord Zed and Freddy Krueger's love child here, it's Dracula by the way if you haven't seen it, he and Blade have a showdown and Dracula comes out with...
Are you ready to die, motherfucker?
Number 4. Casting. Goyer stated he loved the film Best in Show and thought it would be fun to see how many actors from that film he could get into Blade. Unbelievable. Best in Show is an improv film featuring a lot of the cast and crew from Spinal Tap. It's about 5 entrants into a prestigious dog show. So, a lot of overlap there with a film about a man who goes around stabbing people. I guess it explains why Triple H has a dog. Dr. Vance, played by John Michael Higgins, does fit in with the story, but his role is small compared to Parker Posey as Danica Talos. She comes across as a parody of this kind of character and it clashes with other aspects of the film. The jokes she's given fall flat and it's so clear she's acting that it's off-putting. The rest of the villain team aren't much better. There's Daniel Craig Light and Triple H, who is by no means good, but what do you expect? Number 3, the film's endgame. So the vampires want to use Dracula, now called Drake, a move that is nearly worth a numbered mention on this list by itself, to create a race of sunlight-resistant vampires and take over the world. It's very similar to number 2 without any of the creativity. In the second film they wanted Blade for that, and surely searching out and digging up Dracula is a hell of a lot more hassle than just having another crack at Blade. Especially when the good guys happen to have a virus that when injected into Drake will kill all vampires. What are the odds? Number 2, David Goyer. Yes, I know he worked on the first 2, and yes, he worked on the Nolan Batman trilogy, but this was the first time he was in full control. And damn, it is not a good advert for his directorial talents. It's a choppy film that jars the eyes and does little to lure you into the world. It comes across as another film that Blade's just stumbled into. Which makes sense considering Goyer intended this film to be a launchpad for a Night Stalker spin-off. Which leads us to number 1. It's not a Blade film. It's as simple as that. The first 2 films had dangerous gothic undertones, and Guillermo del Toro, when making the sequel, was adamant he kept the feel of the first and watched every piece of footage filmed for the movie. That includes everything that was cut, and even the dailies. He provided his own take, but the sequel still felt like a Blade film. The first two films seemed a lot more rooted in reality, whereas Trinity screams with over-the-top comic bookness and kind of distanced itself from what made this series different. The epitome of this is Jessica Biel's lightsaber bow thing. Half as hot as the sun and packs away smaller than some of the mobile phones I've owned. Bullshit! Oh, and vampire dogs. Seriously, this film has fucking vampire dogs.
Third question comes from Imhotep. Says, what's up with Dracula?
This film's take on Dracula is pretty... What do you want? Oh, well, yes, hello. I just happen to be here in this neighborhood. I was just wondering if you need anything, you know, to answer any more questions. No, I'm good. Oh, well, then you're okay. How is the review? I'm recording it now. Oh, but I would! Oh, well, I'll just be getting out of your hair then. Okay. Okay. Oh, see you, Harold.
See you, Colin.
Golly. We're told that, disgusted by the world, Dracula went into hiding and lay dormant in Iraq for centuries until the vampire team found him within the first 2 minutes of the film. I personally would have preferred if the first quarter of the film consisted of the vampires looking for Dracula while simultaneously setting Blade up with the FBI. I understand introducing Dracula early to help build him as a threat, but it just comes across as convenient. If you're going to do that, you might as well just have Drakey Boy wake up from a long nap and be drawn to the city by some MacGuffin the vampires have. Instead, they find him and lock him up without telling him why they need him until later. Thing is, he kills one of them when they find him. He's stronger than any vampire. So how does Triple H and co get him back to their base and lock him up? I guess he's weak. I mean, none of us are 100% in the morning, apart from those goddamn morning people. Everybody hates you, you know. I will say I approve of the Dracula character in this film to some degree. Okay, not the whole calling him Drake thing, but other than that, it's a very different take on the character. Think about it. Every other time we've seen Dracula in films or on TV, he's very theatrical, flamboyant, smooth. Here, he's a low-cut, top-wearing American muscle man. That's a bit weird. However, the demon part is interesting, and it was a nice touch to use the Reaper creature design from Blade 2 in the transformation. I would have liked to have seen more development here and have the reveals come off as something more of an event, instead of just those 2 minutes of screen time it got at the end where it did nothing but get stabbed by an arrow.
Okay, this one comes from Jazz Hands. Says, you can't tell me you don't hate the Night Stalkers.
I can, and I will. Though I more than see your point. At times this feels like their film with Blade just running around like their muscle, kind of like what Triple H is for the bad guys. You have to realise this isn't like the previous films and decide whether or not you're going to let yourself get taken along for the ride. It's frustrating and painful at times, but if you watch this solely as a vampire film, it's bearable. Ryan Reynolds as Hannibal King is certainly Ryan Reynolds playing every Ryan Reynolds character, so he has charm and is one of the more memorable characters in the film. But yes, there are times where his shtick wears a little thin.
You cock-juggling thunder!
If he was in the first two, I would hate him, but here he does give the film something. It's actually Wesley's fault this part is as big as it is. A lot of the lines he had was simply because Snipes wasn't there. Jessica Biel does a good job with the character of Abigail, though we don't learn that much about her. Other than she's Whistler's illegitimate daughter, she likes to listen to music while she kills things, and shoots arrows when she's sad.
How could this happen to me? I made my mistakes, got nowhere to run. The night goes on as I'm fading away.
At first, Goyer was going to use a character from the original Tomb of Dracula comics and call her Rachel Van Helsing, but the subject of my previous review kinda ruined that. So we got the convenient secret daughter of Whistler. Whistler, whose first name is Abraham, as in Abraham Van Helsing.
Question 5 comes from Luke Cage. Says, was Blade Trinity the best idea they had?
Goyer's original idea was to have the film set 20 years in the future once the vampires had taken over the world, with Blade's half-vampire blood slowing down his aging. Think of it as a kind of post-apocalyptic world of the vampires, but the studio deemed it too dark. Yes, too dark for a Blade film. So it's not entirely Goya's fault that we got Blade and the Bladettes. Guillermo del Toro turned the film down when his dream project of Hellboy came along, and even Stephen Norrington, the director of the first Blade film, did consider returning, but once he read the script he soon changed his mind. At least 2 scenes from Blade Trinity were meant to be in the previous films. The car chase scene was meant to be in Blade 2 but was deemed too expensive. Goya wanted to use it though, and he worked it in here. The same goes for the blood bank scene. This scene was meant to be in the first Blade film, but to this film's credit, it does fit in brilliantly and is easily one of the best scenes in the film. Blade Trinity has 3 endings. The theatrical ending. After the battle, Dracula morphs into Blade, allowing Blade to get away and the authorities to take the body. Once on the autopsy table, Dracula morphs back into his Dracula self, but not the demon. Ryan Reynolds then explains that Blade is still out there doing what he does and that the war will never end. In an early script, after Dracula takes Blade's place, Blade goes on to live a normal life, throwing his sword in the river, standing on the bank with no sunglasses, no big coat, just a normal guy, presumably with some weird hair. The director's cut ending. It's Blade's body they bring in and he gets up in the morgue and appears to give in to the thirst and feed on the nurses. This is the ending Goya intended to be the canonical one. However, with the films continuing in the TV show, it seems the theatrical ending was the one used, and that the Daystar virus simply didn't spread as far or as quickly as the Night Stalkers hoped. The third ending had the Night Stalkers go hunting for a werewolf in a casino. This was included as an extra on the DVD, and when you've seen this, you realise why there is no life in a Night Stalker spin-off.
Don't you know that fur is murder?
So, Blade Trinity could have been different, but ultimately this was David Goya's directorial debut, and for someone who knew the character as much as he did, and had such a hand in the creation of what made him great, it's maddening to see him ignore all that and treat this like an extended pilot.
Blade. Ready to die.
I was born ready, motherfucker.
So that's all the time we have for another episode of the
Whoa! You gotta do a top 10.
I can't.
Well, a top 5. That's as low as I'll go.
Fine! Here's the top 5 things about Blade Trinity that aren't that bad. Number 5, this. Number 4, Whistler. For the short time he's on screen, he's still a great character, and it's a crying shame he was killed off and replaced with younger, underdeveloped characters. Number 3, the opening car chase. Number 2, Wesley Snipes. So he hated it, so he didn't approach it with the same determination and adrenaline as the first 2, but Snipes is still entertaining here. To be honest, if I was him and they turned a film with a character I had invested so much into something completely different, I would have been peeved too. In fact, in Goya's original script, Ryan Reynolds once jokingly calls Blade Blackula. It's not funny, it's just shit. And number 1, I loved the idea of setting up Blade and tricking him into killing a human. It created a great platform and could have been a good obstacle for Blade and Whistler. Although I didn't like the whole Blade in a police station thing and using him in regular or ordinary settings. Still, the trick was good, a shame it was squandered. Blade Trinity is the weakest film in an otherwise amazing series. I can still watch it and enjoy it, but you have to kind of detach yourself from the films that came before and watch it just as a vampire hunter story. In that field, it's by no means terrible. It's got some interesting characters, a unique take on Dracula, and some good action in places. If I had to suggest one Blade film for you, it would be the second one, but I'm a Del Toro man. Thanks for watching another episode of The Minority Report. All that remains is to set up next time. Harold, what film are we doing?
I think you're doing Spider-Man 3.
Funny that. Okay, join me next time as we'll be delving into Spider-Man 3 and I'll try and explain why it's my favourite of the trilogy. Come at me. Come on. If you like The Minority Report, be sure to go on Facebook, give us a like there, we'll do all the updates. The blog is here, And if you've got a question about Spider-Man 3, or you just want to ask me why the hell I like it so much, get your questions into here and be on the show. Until next time, see ya.
No diggity, no doubt, baby. No diggity, no doubt. No diggity, no doubt, baby. No diggity, no doubt. We in the house. Yeah. We in the house. No diggity, no doubt, baby. No diggity, no doubt. We in the house.
Count Chocula? You must be out of your damn mind.
What did I tell you? No one remembers Blackula except for us and Quentin Tarantino.